Good? All right. Good. Okay. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to ProductTank London, November 2022. So good to see so many of you here today. Thanks for coming. And we are excited to start. So for those of you who haven't heard about us before, ProductTank is the world's largest product community. So it was created by product people for product people. And these locations there are cities around the world where product tanks are happening. So it's about 200 cities around the world. So whenever you travel somewhere, you know that there's probably a product tank happening there. So make sure you check out our meetup pages or our website, and you'll always find an event happening somewhere around the world. There are multiple ways to get involved with our communities if you're interested. The first one is essentially coming to join one of our events as you did today, but you can also do more. So you can speak at one of our product tanks. At the moment, myself and the team are working on the strategy for next year, so we are always looking for speakers. So feel free to reach out to myself or my colleagues, and we'll be happy to chat to you about that. You can always host or sponsor an event like Wise is doing today. So always looking for partners and hosts really. So reach out as well. You can also write for Mind the Product. We have an amazing blog up there. We also have a podcast that you can join. So check out our website. There are multiple opportunities for you to get involved. And finally, you can join our product community. We have created it during the pandemic. And it's an amazing community where you can talk to fellow product managers, learn something new, talk to an amazing expert, and it's a great place to be. So I highly recommend joining that one. All right, we'll be using Slido for questions today. So feel free to either scan the QR code or just go to Slido and enter this code up there. And just submit your questions. You can also upvote other questions that you like, and so we'll then prioritize them and we'll cover them during the Q&A at the end. And that's all from me. I'll pass over to Nick. All right, there you go.
2 minutes. Hello, can everyone hear me? Good. Brilliant, great to be here today. Hi everyone, my name's Nick Walters. I'm the Director of Product for Platform Foundations at Calooza. Really happy to be here today. We're going to talk about platform as a product and how to make an impact as a PM in that space. I think the idea of treating the tools and services that engineers use internally within an organisation as a set of products has really been around for 4 or 5 years or so, and it's grown massively over that time from fairly niche to being really quite commonplace across the landscape now. And we're seeing organisations from small startups building their first platform team to large enterprise scale organisations really adopt this as a way of working. And I think what they're trying to do here is really unlock the potential of their people, their technology organisation, but also their platform and the technology that they build. And they're trying to use that to really gain an edge, a competitive edge across over their competition. So things that we've traditionally thought of as maybe non-functional requirements around reliability, scalability, really can have a massive impact on time to market and your ability to get features and functionality out ahead of the competition. But it's also quite an impenetrable space. It's full of kind of technical jargon, and it can be hard as a product manager to understand what you might be working on in that space day to day. Hopefully we can shed some light on that tonight with sharing some real world experiences from the speakers we've got lined up tonight. Not just the happy path and the rose tinted glasses version of that, but also some of the challenges that our teams face across in their day-to-day lives. So I'm really happy and really excited to introduce three great speakers tonight. So first up, we've got Anthony Fairweather from Wise. He's the Group PM for platform there. He's going to help us by giving us a shared understanding of what we mean by a platform. And then we're going to build on that. We've got Sophie Herbert, who's the lead product manager for developer experience and products at Calooza. And she's going to talk about the developer experience journey at Calooza. And then John Wood from GoCardless, the director of product for foundations there, is going to talk about taking a product approach to scalability challenges at GoCardless. As we saw, we got Q&A at the end, so get all your questions in. We'll have a Q&A session afterwards, and we'll all be around to finish off the drinks and pizza at the end as well, so come and say hi afterwards. I'm going to hand over to Ant now. Big round of applause, and yeah, we'll get started. Thanks very much.
Keep clapping. Is that good? Mic check. I think he's good. Hello. Right. Some people would say I should have rehearsed more. We'll see how it goes. So my name's Anthony. Obviously, the T-shirt gives it away. I work at Wise. Hands up if you know what Wise is. Hands up if you prefer the name TransferWise. Hopefully, you'll forget about that in a few years to come. We are Wise, we're not going back. So I probably don't need to explain it, but for those of you who didn't put your hands up, Wise's mission is money without borders. So we enable our customers to move their money anywhere across the world, instantly, transparently, conveniently, and eventually for free. And that's really the kind of important bit, the free bit. So just to contextualize the scale of Wise, we have more than 13 million people and businesses using us, and we process over £8 billion in cross-border transactions every month. It's quite a lot of money moving, certainly more than I can write down anyway. And all of this saves our customers over £1 billion a year in hidden fees. As I said before, transparency is a really important part of Wise, and what we want to do is be transparent about the fee we're charging. So my team, so I work for Platform. There's an internal joke at Wise about which platform. There's about 9 platform teams. I now refer to us as Platform, because we're the original. But basically we are 100 engineers, and we serve our 80 plus product teams. And what do we do for them? We help them to ship their software conveniently, fast, and efficiently. And if that doesn't mean anything, don't worry, I'm going to explain. So just to kind of tie it back, to move that volume of money safely, that product is in a constant state of flux. That's a really important thing to remember while I'm talking. So the platform really has to have super solid foundations. Now, you've probably heard the word platform quite a lot. Throughout my career, especially as a platform PM, I've kind of found platform is a black box. People don't like to look inside it. And then when they do, people use technical jargon, and the audience just shuts off. I'm going to try not to do that today. So one of the reasons I think that's the case is platform means so many different things. It's a really broad surface area. But really what I want to explain today is only going to use like one metaphor and one complex word. And that complex word is production. And I'll explain that as I go. So, time for a story. So let's imagine, close your eyes if you like, that'll help me not to freak out. Imagine that Tanya, over the back, is in a product team that improves the login experience. The team writes some code. Let's say this is the code. It's ready to go. We need to ship it to production. That's that word, production. What does that mean? That means it's live. It means it's serving your customers. It's up there in the cloud, but we don't even need a cloud right now. Let's just look at that orange-shaped square. That's production tonight. That's kind of in the clouds, maybe not as high as the real ones, but It'll do. So obviously I could talk about servers, I could talk about latency, all that complex shit, but none of it's necessary. Like, the important thing is how I get this up to there. And I'm going to really struggle with this mic, but I'm going to ask Lucio to help me. I could make a little tower. I'll have another two. Thanks. Stuck it. Thanks, mate. So, does anybody want to climb my tower to get that into production? Yeah, I'll have to sign a form, so I'm not going to do that now. You know, I mean, I could make this tower a number of different ways. I could get some cushions. I could stack that up. But imagine you've got to do this as an engineer 10 times a day. You're going to get pretty annoyed about climbing up my dodgy little tower. So what could we do, right? We could talk to our customers. So talk to our engineers. They're in the same building, or they're at the end of a Zoom call. We can understand what works for them and what doesn't. And Kieran, if you scroll my notes, that would be really helpful. Thanks, mate. So I can understand how often they are using my product. I think it's about 10 times a day, but some teams less, some teams more. I can understand how much climbing experience they've got. Do they like heights? Who knows? The other thing I could do, technically I own this system, right? I could move production closer to them so they don't have to climb anywhere. All of these things are kind of in the control of the PM. Now, you might not call it a product, but I'd call that MVP. Now let's look at version 2. Hello. Now it wants to climb up to production. Looking good, isn't it? So sure, right, it's not the Rolls Royce of ladders, but it's better than that. So we can all agree we're starting to get somewhere. But let's look back at V1, right? Chances are someone's going to get hurt, but let's think about what effect that's going to have for our customers. You know, we're moving £8 billion of your money every single month. And when we cause a problem, that's your money not going where it needs to go. That's a bit of an issue. So I could use this analogy for shipping code. I could use this for how we do disaster recovery. Essentially, all I'm doing is building different ladders by understanding the problems that I need to solve. The ultimate aim is to create a product that gives consistency, scalability, productivity, efficiency, lots of things that ends in Y. But essentially all of these gains help us to build a reliable product for our customers. Now, lots of people fixate on technology. They assume it's all about the technology, the cloud stuff. And you've got to know everything there is to know about ladders. I don't believe that's true. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact of platform, certainly in my experience. So we talk about this ladder, and every engineer, it's taking them 10 minutes to climb. I know they're slow, right? But bear with me. I couldn't get a bigger ladder. So imagine they're taking them 10 minutes. Maybe we remove the top step. We could probably get that down to 8 minutes. Now let's assume they're doing that twice a day. Suddenly we've got 20 minutes down to 16 minutes. There's 500 engineers at Wise shipping at that cadence. Starting to add up, right? So we've gone from 20,000 minutes a day in engineering time to 16,000. If you want to put that into money, let's say £100 an hour, that's 33k spent on climbing ladders down to 26k. It's pretty cool, right? I could save some costs, maybe have a few less developers, or I could have the same amount of developers, but do the job of 8 more full-time developers every single day. Suddenly, we're talking about growth in a whole new way. So often the platform advantage is not just about cost control, it's about how do we power the organization for growth. So what I'm talking about here is how do you optimize a ladder? Now remember how broad platform was? There's a huge landscape of opportunities and levers that PMs can pull. Ultimately, the term I use is platform PMs are the force multipliers in any tech organisation. Now the question isn't, am I technical enough? The question is, I know enough to spot the compounding effects that I can have at an organisation. Thanks very much. I'm going to introduce Sophie to tell you about the ladders she's building at Calooza. Keep clapping.
Right. It's got to go in the pocket.
Keep clapping.
Yep.
Cool.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ant. Just move this piece of software and put it back over here. Brilliant. So, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Fab. Hopefully, now you've all got quite a good idea for what it means to do product in the world of platform engineering. And I'm going to try and bring this to life a bit by telling you more specifically about what we're doing at Calooza and how our approach is focused on driving improvements for engineering productivity. Let's start with a bit of context. So, at Calooza, we're building a platform for the global energy industry, providing energy retailers like British Gas, OVO Energy, etc., with the tools that they need to create flexible business operating systems and lead in the energy transition to decarbonise the grid. We've gone from a company of 50 to almost 500 people in just 4 years and grown an entire data platform. And our growth has been explosive and it's been fascinating to be a part of. But it's brought one exciting challenge. How can we ensure we continue to rapidly deliver high-value outcomes in an organisation of this size? Here is my dog Nacho, and he's helped me put this slide together today. So, in the book, The Mythical Man Month, Essays for Software Engineering, it is shown that as companies grow in size linearly, communication costs grow exponentially. This means that you won't be able to scale the output of your company linearly to the size of your engineering organisation without incurring quite significant communication overheads. And we've seen this very much to be the case at Calooza. But here's where my talented team comes in. In order to address this problem of scaling, it is vital that we make every single engineer more productive. If we can increase the productivity of our engineers, we can increase the output of our business without the corresponding communication overheads. And I just want to quickly say at this point, we're not talking about cracking the whip. We're not talking about making people work longer hours, work harder, etc. It's about improving productivity by removing barriers, removing blockers, and engineering inefficiencies. So, we've carried out a lot of research in order to identify our biggest problem areas that are creating these engineering inefficiencies. So, we've done focus groups to explore specific problem areas in detail, engineering interviews, diary studies to get deep into the day-to-day, what it's like to be an engineer at Calooza, what are the pain points, and carried out lots of workshops to collaborate with our users on potential ways of solving those problems. And this research could not have been more fruitful. We were able to identify these 4 major problem areas. So the first is repetitive tasks. This tends to be things that are manual, repetitive, automatable, tactical, and devoid of enduring value. Much like what Ant was talking about with his ladder analogy earlier. An example of this might be needing to repeatedly spin up infrastructure when creating something new. Could be anything. Have to do that over and over again. Then we've got time taken to onboard new starters. So how quickly new engineers are delivering value to the platform. Then we've got lack of standardization and centralization across our tech estate. So this makes it difficult for established engineers to move team without a similar lead time to productivity to that of a new starter. And lastly, discoverability of the platform and the technical information that an engineer needs. So that's the time taken for an engineer to find an answer to their technical questions and discover what they need to about our platform. And how my Bitmoji feels about this turkey is how I feel about these problems. Very excited. So from this research, we've been able to get an idea of the size of the prize that we're working towards. We've built a proof of concept that automatically spins up a new service. So looking at removing some of those repetitive tasks. And with this proof of context, we have seen that we've reduced the time it takes an engineer to do this from 2 weeks to 2 minutes. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to stress, I'm not exaggerating, that is a fact. So, we've also learned that on average, each engineer spends about 5 hours a week searching for answers to their technical questions. Across our 270 engineers, that's an average cost of £2 million a year. It's crazy. So, all of this research and, oh, sorry, it didn't come up. There we go. All of this research and focus on understanding our problems has led us to prioritise creating a developer platform to centralise, to be a central location for engineers to go and find answers that they need about our platform. So more easily finding information that they need, but also finding the tools that they need to automate away some of those repetitive tasks. So, how are we actually measuring success? What should our product metrics be? Let me just get my notes. So, as I said earlier, our success is about making engineers more productive. So it goes without saying that we should be measuring productivity. And just to mention again, we're not aiming to look at productivity of an individual. It's not a blame game. We're looking at improving productivity at a team and organisational level. We want to make improvements as a whole across the org. So back to measuring productivity. This has 3 big key challenges. The first one is defining productivity itself. What do we think actually contributes to productivity? And therefore, what do we specifically need to measure? This will be different between different organisations. For example, at Calooza, we've decided not to measure anything explicitly to do with innovation because it's not particularly pertinent to our goals in the short term. However, it's likely that that will evolve over time and we should change the definition of productivity as our company goals change too. Our metrics can be affected by multiple different things. So proving a shift in productivity as a result of something we deliver could be tricky. And lastly, it's hard to find leading metrics. With a relatively long lead time between the rollout of a solution to seeing its impact. Let's have a look at how we're measuring productivity more specifically at Calooza. Glad someone saw that. So I'm not going to go through all of these because I fear we may all fall asleep. But I'll just touch on a couple. First up, time to 10th PR. So PR means pull request. This is when an engineer is making a change to the code. And we're measuring how long it takes to do that 10 times. And I think this might be our most straightforward metric. It's a great measure to demonstrate our impact on the time taken to onboard new starters, or for an existing established engineer to move team, how quickly they're getting up to speed with things. The assumption is that the faster that someone delivers their 10th PR, the faster they are more competently delivering value for our platform. And I'll just quickly also touch on time to service first deploy. So the nature of what we do at Calooza requires frequent spinning up of new services. This is very much a chunky, repetitive task. So a reduction in time to service first deploy is a reduction in those repetitive tasks. And this is what I was mentioning earlier with our proof of concept, taking the time it takes for a service to be deployed for a specific service from 2 weeks to 2 minutes. And then lastly, these 4 metrics are supported by our adorable metrics. So DORA metrics are a set of metrics that are widely used across the industry. I'm sure some of you are familiar with them. And they are used to measure software development and delivery performance for an organisation. We've built on them slightly to make them more relevant for our organisation. So what you're looking at on the board here is not quite textbook, but not far from it. If we're not performing highly in these metrics, then it leads to an increased disruption and context switching for engineers, and it is also proven that elite performers in DORA metrics are twice as likely to hit their company goals. So we want to be measuring these because if we're doing well, they will indicate success for our company. They are really important. So let's think about it for a moment. If there are more incidents, more bugs, longer time fixing problems, then there's less time for established engineers to help new starters get up to speed and speed up their onboarding. If discoverability is poor, then we might expect time to recovery to be long because those on-call engineers might not be familiar with the area of an incident, so they might need to spend more time trying to figure out what's going wrong, and so on. So, just to round things off, as a result of all that we have of all that we've understood so far with our research and starting to measure all of this data, we gain better visibility of productivity across our platform and where we are on this journey. And we can start to see clearly what a huge opportunity space we're working in, and it is huge. So ultimately, we'll be able to make headway on continuing to deliver high value in an organisation of 500 people growing in a scalable way. So that's all from me. I'm Sophie Herbert. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to hand over to John. Oh, actually.
Having a dog in the audience is just like making a day. I was nervous before and I was actually just stroking a dog for a while. It was lovely. That being too weird, I don't think you saw me, which makes it even more odd. Right. Cool. Pop that in the pocket. Whoa. Got it all. Right. Hello, how are you? I'm John. I work in a very flashy company, as you can see, called GoCardless. And yeah, I lead the foundations team. So there's about 50 wonderful people in GoCardless that wake up every day to make our foundations awesome. And I'm here to give you an example of what it's actually like to be a platform PM. Just out of interest, selfish question, show of hands. Who is actually working today as a platform PM? Who's in this room? Okay, cool. Who isn't a platform PM and interested to be a platform PM? What does everyone else do? I'm really glad you're here. Because I love this space and you're here, so this is good. We'll work with it. So we've just heard from Sophie one of the things that you're practically going to be doing a lot as a platform PM. So you're going to be working on productivity. The other thing you're going to think about a lot is managing risk, which is really exciting. Gets me up in the morning. So I'm going to tell you about that today. And GoCardless, just to give you a bit of context, is on a mission to become the world's #1 bank payments network. And practically what that means is we think the future is your money going directly from your account to your merchant's account. That creates a whole load of benefits in the system, and we can pass that on to merchants. And as of today, we have 80,000 merchants, all the way up to massive companies like Ovo and teeny tiny merchants who we love to help too, who believe in that journey with us. Now, working in the foundations, practically all you really need to care about here is we process millions of payments every single day. And we're doing pretty good at this, so we're growing very, very fast, and it creates this big fat risk in our system that scares everyone and means our CTO doesn't sleep very well. And that risk is called scalability. So, and this is the sort of overarching story that we're going to explore the experience of a platform PM today. Scalability is the ability for your technology to handle an increase in size and scale without toppling over. And I'm going to explain this with a heavily pixelated camel. And I've been using this analogy in GoCardless for about a year. And about 3 months in, I started to love this camel, and I've named him Cecil. So when I say Cecil, I mean camel. Now, Cecil represents the technology of our product, and what's on his back represents the scale and size of our product. And this picture is like most early life products. So he has not very much on his back. The technology, that is Cecil, can handle it very easily. No scalability risk. Everyone sleeps. As life goes on, businesses grow, hopefully. They serve more and more customers in more complex ways, and everything gets a bit silly and a bit overloaded. And we all know that businesses don't think about technology investment whilst they're growing like hell when they're early stage, with their backs against the wall. And if they continue on this path and they don't invest and they don't solve their scalability risk, Cecil, poor Cecil, goes splat. Ouch. Now, Cecil, pixelated, and just in case anyone's thinking about this, if anyone wants to take high-res images of camels in various poses, it would really help me. So if you're an avid photographer, it's a niche, I'd love you to fill it. Now, more importantly, when poor Cecil does go splat, it has very serious real-world consequences. Millions of people can't pay for stuff, they can't access services. Tens of thousands of businesses, in our case, cannot get cash flow. Cash flow is what allows you to pay your staff, and it's the lifeblood of your business. So as a product manager in Platform PM, my job is to go understand that pain, even if it hasn't yet materialized, and be the voice of the customer and bring that back into the business and solve their problems. And so the situation is quite serious. The camel, our technology, is starting to look a bit ridiculous. Cecil could go splat, and with it, probably our business if we did nothing about it. So as a platform PM, you'd think solving something like scalability, getting people interested in and prioritizing it in your business would be easy. But it's really, really hard, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So there's 3 reasons why. The first is that humans are absolutely terrible at perceiving risk. Because for all your hard work and your millions of pounds of investment, the impact is that nothing happens. And humans love to get positive signals if they want to actually do something. Second of all, solving problems like scalability, while very fun for people like me and engineers, involves reaching into the guts of the product, which means it takes ages to do and it's really unpredictable. And businesses desperately crave for certainty at every avenue. And then there's the last one. I don't know why, but every single business I've ever worked in gets really, really excited by shiny features. And they really over-index on thinking that that is the miracle path to growth at all moments in its life. And so when you put something like risk out there, people just look at you like you're a bit weird. And so, I got too excited with the clicker. So to finish off, if you are an aspiring PM, I'm looking at the 2 people who put your hands up, I love you. If you're an aspiring PM, you're going to get a bit of an idea about what you actually might do day to day. If you are a platform PM, hopefully you'll get a bit of a better idea of how to articulate and prioritize risk. And for the majority of the people in the room, I don't know what you do, but I hope you find it interesting. Right. Okay, problem number 1. Problem number 1 is humans are terrible at perceiving risk. Now, what you can't do as a platform PM is prove that the risk is real by waiting until Cecil goes splat and everyone gets hurt. And so somehow you have to measure something that doesn't actually exist yet. So there's 2 areas I'm going to really encourage you to go digging. The first is find incident data, look at the frequency and size, and then when you find some really horrible incident, go speak to a customer who actually got hurt by it and bring that story back into the business. Incredibly powerful. The second thing is work with your engineers to measure system performance and find a way of proving that over time it's going bad. So in our case, we have a database. Database fundamentally runs on a computer somewhere in Google Cloud for us. And like a computer, when it's getting overloaded, it gets very hot, it whirs, and eventually it falls over. And so what we care about is database saturation, which is basically to say how much healthy headroom does that computer have. And if you can show that that's changing over time in a negative direction, it's very easy to convince people that they should be scared and do something about it. Okay, so we've got data. Everyone thinks you're right. Something bad's going to happen. And now they look at your plan and you say, cool, it's going to take 4 quarters. I've got an accuracy of about 50% in that prediction, and it's probably going to overrun. And so your CFO looks at you like you're absolutely mental. But you've still got to somehow get this thing moving. And so what's really helpful is rather than talking about project delivery, is you need to flip everyone in the business to talk about their risk tolerance. What you need to do is find a way of measuring and creating an absolute line that stops the most senior people in your business sleeping at night. And if you can really focus them on risk tolerance rather than the time to deliver something, then it becomes a much easier conversation because you're basically getting down to the brutal truth. There's an intolerable risk in your business, and it doesn't matter if you don't like the unpredictability, and it doesn't matter how long it's going to take, you're going to do it anyway. So we've shown with data, Cecil's going to go splat, we don't like it. We've also got our CTO and CFO aligned that they can't sleep at night because the risk is intolerable, so they're going to do it anyway. Then you get to the really tricky bit. This is the bit that is actually genuinely painful. And the reality is you're going to be sat in a room with about 10 other PMs, and they're all going to be clutching their hands full of shiny features. And they're going to be good features because they're probably really good PMs like you. And you're somehow going to have to convince them that they're going to have to give all that up to go work on your thing. Now, this is the one I'm going to go a bit verbose. I love platform PMs. I am one. And the reality is you're going to have to be really brave because I think most platform PMs spend most of their time as a bit of an oddball in the PM room. And they spend most of their time challenging the status quo and actually being the people armed with really great product discovery to show that that risk is real, it's going to hurt a real person, and it's a lot more important than that feature. So we're back to heavily pixelated Cecil. So in this case, we weren't successful. The business kept growing. It didn't do what was good for them, and the technology fell over and a lot of people got hurt. Now, this is GoCardless with our main database. Don't worry too much about what this is saying, but basically this is a computer. The green is the headroom, and this isn't very much headroom. And this is us in August, having miraculously got the whole company to prioritize a whole lot of very painful work, and now we've got loads of headroom, which means that there's millions of people who can access their services, and there's tens of thousands of customers that happily rely on us for their cash flow. And Cecil, pixelated properly, is very happy. Cool. So 3 things to leave you with today. First is if you are a platform PM, you're going to spend most of your time discovering and prioritizing risk. It's a massive part of the job. It's really important. The second thing you have to be really good at is using data and compelling real customer stories that non-technical people can understand that shows you're heading towards something bad happening and that you're in an intolerable level of risk for the business so that you actually have to act. And then the last one is you're going to have to be a very brave soul because nearly every day you're going to challenge the status quo. And if you're the type of person that actually likes challenging the status quo, it's a really great job. And that's that. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John. Just put this on. We're going to have to do a bit of mic juggling now for the Q&A because we've got one mic to share around all of us and do the Q&A. Do you guys want to get the stools and things out when I'm talking? So thanks very much, everyone. 3 great talks, great analogy on climbing ladder to get change into production and improving engineering efficiency from Ant at the start, and then some great insight on discovery techniques and how applying those to a platform space from Sophie, and then camels and data from John. So great stuff. Thanks very much. Big hand for the speakers, please. And do a bit of juggling. I'll try and perch on that ladder.
Testing. There you go.
Just grab that. Cheers. Thanks, Ahmed. Yeah, just that. Perfect. Thank you.
It's like Parkinson, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've got some questions lined up. Thanks to everyone who submitted their questions on Slido. The link should come up. If you go on to there we go. If anyone wants to put any more in, just so you know, we're going to have to pass around the little one so everyone can hear online. So first question from Damien. So Sophie, you mentioned adoption and time to value, PRs, deploys, etc. as metrics. Why focus on those rather than the amount of problems or failures in the other end of the pipeline? Hold on, I'm going to pass you the mic.
You're right with that bit. Cool, thank you. Good question. So I think it's because we are focused on productivity. And also, I suppose sort of the DORA metrics do also reflect some of the sort of problems and failures that are happening across the platform. And we're never going to be able to measure specifically, I suppose, everything that's going wrong. So we need to have a metric that gives us an indicator that's a bit more broad so that we can see how we're making sort of more general improvements, because we can't go in, it's kind of not feasible to go in and tackle specific things. We need to look for the biggest, chunkiest bits of value that is potentially affecting every engineer across the organisation, and trying to solve those problems first, because it'll have more impact.
Cool, thanks, Sophie. And John, anything to add on that in terms of metrics?
Go for it. I'd say one of the things is that as a platform team, there's a bit of a seesaw going on. So you can't, sometimes you get lucky and you can improve risk at the same time as you can actually improve speed. So like maybe you're improving your CI, so the time to build and test and deploy code. And so you can actually figure out how to make things faster while also getting some security benefits in there. But other times as well, you just have to make a trade-off. So maybe at the moment your developers can go into a console and do some really scary things in there. And you might just say, okay, cool, well, we're going to go slower, but it's fine because this is such a big risk. And I think that's where the platform role actually gets quite interesting, because you end up having to compare a lot of apples to pears, and it's where the real skill comes in the job. I'm sorry to everyone at home because I didn't have the mic near.
What was the question again?
Measuring productivity versus measuring reliability risk and failures.
I'm too busy worrying about mics. So the way I explain this at Wise is we have 4 key pillars or KPIs, right? And they're all intention. So if you dial up one, or let's say we dial down cost, that's going to have an adverse effect elsewhere. So you're almost like, if you do one thing, you're kind of watching what the effect on the other 3 are. And if nothing happens, you go to the pub. But if anything does happen, you have to work against it to try and keep them all in balance. So it's important to measure them and keep your kind of finger on the pulse. But often you can guess, but you're not always sure which one it's going to affect.
Nice, okay. Keep in mind, I think it's a pretty good one to start with. So, as a question from Anonymous, is this just DevOps? How does this differ from DevOps? Maybe people have heard about SRE, others, etc. What's the difference?
Holding myself back from a question in retaliation. Define DevOps. So, yeah, it is DevOps in some people's opinion, but it's DevOps kind of turbocharged. So essentially we understand the problem properly first. So we use proper discovery. We understand and we size that problem to understand if it's worth solving. there's endless things you can do, but you can't just chase your tail all the time. You have to go for the biggest ones, and then you have to measure the impact of that.
Good answer. Anyone else? That was good. Yeah. Cool. Great question from Theory. Apologies if I've said that incorrectly. So centralisation implies preventing people from going and creating their own path, discovering new ways of doing things. What do we do with the internal platforms team to avoid that? So how do we balance that innovation, going, breaking new ground, doing new things, getting new value with standardisation, centralisation, taking people along a set of rails, as it were?
Can I say that? Yeah. Nice little setup there. Oh God, I've ruined it.
Can you repeat the question, Sophie, because I'm not speaking, so I don't want.
You're testing me now. What was the question? It was. Do you want to?
Sorry. Okay. So the question was really around sort of the balance between standardising everything, putting everyone down a set of rigid rails, and people being able to go and break ground, discover new things, and innovate in that space. And how do we make that trade-off? Sorry.
This is going really well. So I think it's a really good question. I think the reality is that for a scaling organisation to be successful, you need some level of standardisation, and we've seen it at Calooza, where we began with really autonomous teams. Anyone could use whatever technology they wanted, whatever tech stack they wanted, and it was, loads of innovation going on, I suppose, in that sense. But now we're in a tricky situation where we're having to kind of rein it in. And so I think the way that we're approaching this is with something that I think Spotify have pioneered with the sort of golden paths. And so we're going to sort of create these standardized golden paths or create some tools that automate things. But by no means is that the only thing that you can do. It's the sort of recommendation. But if if what we'll be saying to our teams is, if they think they need to change it, or they need to innovate or do something differently, absolutely, by all means. And the idea is that we'll be sort of iterating on these and coming back to them and looking at what's going on across the platform. And actually, team X over there might be doing something better than the golden path, and so we should change it. So it's striking the balance, and we kind of want to put the onus on the teams and the engineers to kind of make the best choice for their product in their area, but the sort of golden paths and standardization is there to enable us to go as fast as we need to go, and to keep delivering things rapidly. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, so one of the things we think about a lot is what stage is that internal product at in its life cycle. So what would be a really bad thing, in my view, for an internal platform team is if you basically just build stuff and say, that's that. It's, in theory, like everything you build, everyone has to adopt by 100%, no choice, otherwise, let's say, the CTO gets angry. So in one way, that's really efficient, but in practice, we find that that's quite inefficient. So what we typically say is when we build some new sort of golden path, some new way of doing things, the onus is on us to find product market fit internally. That is, the first set of adoption to some level has to be chosen for by our customers, because that improves the product quality, and it actually puts the onus on us to make something genuinely good at solving the problem. And then I think what you need to do is, and there's no right answer to this, finding the right moment where actually adoption becomes more push than pull, so that the company actually gets the efficiency benefit. We recently moved for our continuous integration, how we build and test code. Now, initially, people were adopting that because it was just better. Once we reached about 30%, everyone's adopting the thing. Now, we're pushing that at that point because We've proven the benefits, we've proven it's a better experience. Now it's time for the company to actually get the benefits, and we're not going to wait forever for that long tail to come through.
Great, thanks. Great answers, guys. So, John, probably one for yourself. So, could you give us a bit more information around how you set up the risk line? So, above the line, below the line, lessons you picked up from it.
Cool. So there's a purist answer, and then there's the answer that works. So the purist answer is that you think about scalability, because you can perfectly load test every single service to some future amount of load that the server is going to take, and you can find out when it's going to break, and you can say that's 15 months. We've got 15 months scalability runway. That doesn't happen most of the time. And so what we actually did at GoCardless is we've got everyone aligned around the size, and I mean the disk size of our database. Anyone who's an engineer thinks I'm daft. I'm not entirely daft, because there's a human aspect, and that's that I actually have to get everyone across the business, non-technical and technical, rallied around some kind of measure they can understand, that can create some kind of shiny graph that I can put some nice shiny threshold on. And actually, recently we had GoCardless at this big live event, 1,000 people all in London from around the world, and they put up a slide of us going under the threshold for disk size. And everyone cheered. Most people don't know why they cheered, but they cheered. And so that's like the nuance of it. There's the right answer in terms of like the purist answer, and then there's the pragmatic answer that gets stuff done and allows the whole company to get rallied behind you. Because if you can't rally everyone behind you, no one's going to trade off for that shiny new feature. And so that's the sort of the nuance and the balancing act I think we have to play.
Nice. So good old building advocacy amongst your stakeholders. A great question from Anonymous here. So, and maybe I'll come to you with this one, but we focus a lot on engineering efficiency, which is obviously important. But what about the role of platform PM in supporting productivity and maybe scalability of other functions? Can platform PMs influence outside of the tech and engineering org, or other disciplines within that?
Still thinking about my answer. So repeating the question, it's about how can platform PMs think about things beyond kind of the realms of the kind of cloud technology and delivery. I think we do influence things. I don't know if I necessarily say we go beyond our realm, like we've got too much stuff to do in our domain. But we definitely think about, I guess, adding new ways of thinking about some of the things we do worry about. So one of the things we look at is vendor cost. How do you predict the cost of a vendor that isn't a flat line? So it essentially scales with growth. It scales with volume. So you have to start to educate the business and talk to the business in a way that makes sense. So you start to change that narrative from this is my vendor cost and this is how much I'm adding to it every month, to actually as a percentage of our North Star metric, let's say money transferred, we start to get to a really clear vision of not only like how efficient are we, like if you look back to the Wise mission, like eventually free is crucial. So we have to really think carefully about is our vendor cost scaling at the right kind of in the right direction for us to achieve that mission. And we can take that and we apply that lens to all sorts of other parts of the business. So that's, I think, where the PM thinking can really add value. Like it doesn't necessarily not dissing the growth PMs, right? Like we tend to look more inwards about how do we control that kind of cost base. And there's similar tribes in Wise that do that, but it's a slightly different lens to think about. But it can be as effective as a growth team looking for new customers or retention.
Yeah, nice. I think a great example. I think the one thing I'd maybe add to that is compliance, security, and risk. I think they're great examples of where a really effective platform can help make those things so much faster and easier to implement and really prevent them from being a kind of drag on engineering productivity or speed to market. I think that's another good place to think about these things. I think Anonymous is in with some more great questions. So I'll keep us moving on. So yeah, great question from Veronica. So for all of us, have you noticed a correlation between having a high quality internal platform and reduced stress or burnout among employees? John, you're nearest. I'll go to you first.
No. Because every time we create it, it's instantly diverted into something else. But what I would say that is true is that fundamentally, if you do provide a better developer experience, like, it's just a more joyful day. And I can't measure and tell you exactly what that does for retention and what it does for people's spirits, but we all know that that's quite a tangible thing and it makes a difference. So that's, and also you're in the same building as them, so it's like a lovely experience as well. Do you want to go next?
Yeah. I was just going to add to that, just from our experience at Calooza. So we're quite early on in our sort of developer experience journey. But from what we have sort of demoed and tried out with our engineers, that they absolutely love it. Like, it is going to just make their lives so much easier. So I guess the time saved will then get put towards something else. But for us, the key thing is that they're creating new features for our clients, not doing the sort of repetitive, really painful things, things they find painful over and over again. And yeah, so we've just had such a sort of great reception from them, and I can't wait to get the stuff that we've got in the pipeline rolled out really widely, because it's just going to make such a huge impact to the org.
I'll just add to that. If you do create an amazing developer experience or experience for your data analysts, PMs, one effect it does have is they tend, just like a customer, right? They'll tell their friends. So when it comes to recruitment, really solid platforms actually attract other engineers. So you end up as a bit of a swarming, like having been in the business a little while, like if you look at Airbnb, Netflix, they're held up as the shining examples, and everyone's like, ooh, a job there would be amazing because I get to work with this. So I think that really does add value.
That's a good shout.
Yeah, 100%. I think, how often do people come and ask you how they can make your day job easier? I think just even having that conversation can be really powerful. So, yeah, great answers, folks. So, next one, can I get one book recommendation or resource from each of you as to where you'd go to kind of get more insight into platform product management?
My instant answer was Harry Potter. Because they are so good. They're so good. Outside of that, truthfully, I've never read a platform PM book where I was like, that's got all the answers. It's kind of why I like this space and why hopefully this conference is interesting. So I'm going to pass it on.
I'm actually going to say the same. I've never read a book on platform engineering for product management. I largely read a lot of product management-y books and apply a lot of those practices to what I do, and it's quite sort of transferable. So maybe someone could write a book.
Yeah, that's basically the answer. This is where Anne says, I wrote.
Thanks for the segue, Anonymous. There is only one. I don't know if I'd recommend reading it unless you're really into it. Accelerate is like the Bible, so you should read that if you're a PM. That's where adorable metrics started.
Yeah.
But I actually don't think you need to. I think if you want to really read a really good book, go and read Hastings' book on Netflix culture. That tells you far more about like autonomy and leadership and company structure, and that's way more interesting.
Can I add something? It's just something that I found really interesting actually is and useful is Spotify have a bunch of videos and blogs about Backstage and how they are using Backstage as a developer portal. And for me, with the sort of productivity stance, all of that has been really interesting, really useful to sort of gain ideas and see how they've done it, because it's all sort of very much talking about their journey that they've been on, and yeah, using a lot of those learnings in what we do.
Thank you. One I think I'd add to that would be the Team Topologies book. So it's Matthew Skelton, Manuel Pays, if I've pronounced that correctly. The book's great around kind of team structure, but actually they do a lot of blogs, talks, and slides around kind of platform as a product. So definitely worth having a look at. I think we're probably into the last couple of questions, but we'll be out at the bar, I guess we'll call it, afterwards. So come and chat to us. So where do we report to in our organisations, and does it matter? I guess this is the kind of CPO, CTO, somewhere in between kind of question. John.
Yes, so for us, I report into the Chief Product Officer, and my peer, who I sort of co-run our area with, reports into the CTO. I don't think if we just reported to the CTO, that would be bad, fundamentally. So, yeah, that's how we do it, but I don't think it really matters. I just think the key thing is that you're in an environment that you're just reporting to someone who fundamentally can get it enough, and also they get how product management can play a role. So it's not like this isn't IT, this is just a tech thing. They get the product aspect and the value that brings, otherwise I think it'd be quite difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, so at Calooza, again, we report into our VP of product. But the way we do things at Calooza is we see tech and product very much as a partnership. So usually every product person has a sort of engineering counterpart at whatever level they're at. And that's same at sort of our VP of product level. So everything that we're doing and how we're reporting is basically teamwork. I can't think of many meetings that I'm in that my equivalent head of engineering probably isn't in as well, and we're doing things very much together all the time. And he's pretty much my partner. Not in a weird way.
So I don't report in the same direction as these guys, so I actually report up through an engineering director. I don't really want that to change. I think it's important that the reporting line has real context and interest in the area that you work in. And our CPO gets it and is interested, but probably not enough. And that might change, but not right now. And I think that's fine. I think the only thing to add to that is just because we report up through engineering and our CTO, we still have a really strong relationship with the product organisation. So we are seen as PMs, we have the same competency matrix, we do all the same ceremonies, and we share notes. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. I guess doubling down on what the guys said, it's not that important, but don't change it for me, please.
Cool, thanks very much. So I'm going to skip a couple actually, but I've just seen a question a bit further down, which I think is really relevant today. So what's the difference in the skill set between a platform PM and maybe it says end user PM here, but maybe generalist PM? What's the difference there?
As you might tell, we actually know each other. And so I'm going to say the answer, and I'm going to feel really mean because we've talked about it. So it's probably the same answer as everyone else. But the thing, we went round and round on this one, like how technical do you have to be? And I think what we came down to is that it is obviously a technical job in many aspects. So the key thing is you have to be intrinsically motivated by tech. Like, are you a PM when you're working on the login system, whatever it was, that went 3 levels deep to figure out how that thing actually worked? Like, if it's a PM that's just not interesting to you, you're going to hate the job. But fundamentally, 90% of it is just like incredible product craft. That's what makes you good. But if you don't have that technical, intrinsic motivation, and if you don't find yourself double-clicking into weird parts of technology, then you're just not going to have like the day-to-day motivation to have fun when you're doing your job.
Yeah, so we're all going to say the same thing. What I would say is, though, back in March, I wasn't working in platform in this world, and now I am. And it's been a steep learning curve and really interesting. I suppose I am interested in the kind of tech side of things, but I think anyone can do it. If you're a product person and you love finding problems and solving them and finding opportunities that create value, you'll love being a platform PM, because it's so tangible. Like, our users are all around us, so we get feedback so easily, and that discovery process is just like, it's right there. It's just so within reach. So that is so refreshing, and I absolutely love that about being working in the developer experience space. Is brilliant. So highly recommend, and you don't need to be super technical.
I'll just add a little bit to that. I 100% agree. I think you need to be able to. So a Google engineer once told me that I need to know that you can add value to a conversation that we're having, and if you can't do that, you're probably not ready. My advice would be blag it, because you can probably learn on the job. I did. My developer engineering experience was HTML 15 years ago, and I could talk to you about cloud for about 3 hours if you want. So I managed to teach myself. I think most people probably can.
Cool, thank you. So I think it's probably going to be the last question, timing-wise, yeah. What was the most effective things or strategies to reduce that communication cost? So I think Sophie is probably talking about that communication curve you described earlier. Pass it over to you.
Thank you. So we are in the sort of early stages, as I said, at Calooza. But from the research that we've been doing, and, well, I say early stages actually, we're relatively far through in this space, but I think the biggest thing is the standardization of the platform. So making it so that the sort of tech is consistent means people can move around more easily, so you can go where the help is needed, and then there's less sort of trying to find the expert in the area to ask, what the hell is going on. And also, by sort of centralising everything, and the sort of approach we're taking with the developer platform, part of that is making documentation really good, really slick, really consistent, really easy to use. And by doing that, people just don't need to again, you're not trying to find the expert, you've got the documentation there, you can just get cracking. So I think that those are sort of 2 key things at Calooza. Yeah. Anyone else?
I have 2. One's a pretty simple one. Shout out to Dave for helping me with this many years ago at Just Eat, but one is like language and terminology. Everybody has a different understanding of those words you're using, especially when you're on different cultures and backgrounds and time zones and countries. Start by just centralizing your language so you know what you're all talking about. There's an immediate gain there. The other thing, like more specific to Wise, certainly we're starting to see this and struggle with it a bit, is like communicating and like creating artifacts is a massive overhead. And that happens with like layers and hierarchy and bureaucracy and scale. So think about how you can, like we're investing in actually like everything should be a dashboard, nothing should be a slide deck. And you can think about that. It means you don't have to create something for that meeting. You just bring the people with the right context in and you load the dashboard. It's a massive communication saving because you're all looking at the same source of truth. Easier said than done, but it is a worthwhile thing to invest in. Again, you know, this is the kind of thing platform PMs can do really good stuff with and have a big force multiplication.
Cool, thanks. I really like that. Everything is a dashboard. That's great. Cool. I think that's everything from us. Really big hand for Ant, Sophie, and John. And the dog, who's been the real star of the show tonight. Thanks very much, everyone. I hope that was useful. Come find us at the bar if you've got any questions. But thank you very much. Cheers.